This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Patty Daly.
Nope. It's the substitute today. No, Patty. Patty is off today. Good morning, everybody. Tim Powers, happy to be here with you on this storm day. Well, not really storm day, storm transition day in Newfoundland and Labrador. Almost a storm day here. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Look, before I get into everything else and get into the preamble and all of that, let me add my voice, if you don't mind, to paying tribute to Vince Gallant. I didn't know Vince super well, but I, of course, had the opportunity to meet him over the years at VOCM, and what a true honor it was for many of us of a certain age. Vince Gallant, one or two others, were the voices that we trusted in Newfoundland and Labrador to give us the straight goods about what was happening in our province and around the world. We'd wake up with Vince, we'd hear him throughout the day, and we'd do it all again the next day. He did his job with excellence, with poise, with professionalism, wonderful radio voice. And when I first came to VOCM, I saw, if you don't mind me, I'm going to call him Mr. Gallant, sitting there, and just a gentle, unassuming person in your physical presence, but this was the giant Vince Gallant. And it truly is a loss when you lose somebody like Vince Gallant. Yes, he hadn't been on the air since 2019, but here was the gentleman, and I would always love to see this, working in his 80s, not because he had to, but because he loved doing it. And I saw a great tribute from his old colleague and friend of mine, Fred Hutton, talking about how when Fred was the news director at VOCM, and I'm sure Greg Smith experienced this as well, and Aidan Hibbs and Kerry Hodder and many of the other people who've been in that chair, Vince would put his hand up to work on weekends or holidays so that people with young families could spend the time together. And that's not an easy shift, let me tell you. That's coming in 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, reading the news, making sure you in Newfoundland and Labrador know what's happening. And here was this man who just loved it. In this day and age, you don't often get to see or meet people who loved what they did, and Vince Gallant certainly did that. And as you've heard through the tributes, I was listening to Ben and Jerry Lynn this morning playing some of the talkbacks. You just got the sense of how he touched everyone. So just adding my voice to it, and as I say, I've been lucky in my life to meet some incredible people in this business, but not all of them necessarily possessed the humility and the down-to-earthiness that Vince Gallant did for the status that he had achieved. And if, as was reported this morning on Openline or on our news program, if they do a Walk of Fame in Newfoundland and Labrador, he ought to be one of the first people on it, given the import he had to this province and to so many people and the mentorship role he played. So thank you for allowing me to do that. And of course, our lines are open this morning if you want to talk about Vince and how he impacted you, if you want to talk about how things have changed since Vince stepped back in news coverage, anything related to that, let's chat about that this morning. Now, I have to tell you, and Vince Gallant would have appreciated that, as many of you know, when I do this show, I often drop my son off early with his mom so she can kindly get him off to school so I can do this. And I was coming back after dropping him off this morning, and what did I see? It was the most wonderful sight. I'd seen a number of runners go by, and there was this one runner who had stopped to adhere to the traffic rules. And it was at a major intersection here, and she was dancing up a storm without a care in the world. I don't know if she was listening to Eyes That Buy or Heave Away or whatever. The dirty old rum's got a hold on me. I want to make sure I sprinkle all those musical numbers around to the right artist, but she was loving it. I don't know know if it's because it's Friday or it's a long weekend here in Ontario or she survived the snowstorm, but she inspired me. So I'm going to try and dance around like her today and have some fun with you and make sure that we get to some of the serious topics of the day. And I know the weather's one of them, but I have to tell you, I still find it so funny sitting here in Ontario. Now, albeit I'm not in Toronto, and the jokes of calling out the military are still pretty regular for those people who do live in Toronto every time it snows, but I have to haul up a CTV News headline here from last night, and it says, first snowstorm in weeks blankets Ottawa on Thursday night. Now, do you want to know what was in that snowstorm? Oh, look, I hit the little pop-up ad. 5 centimeters of snow, 7 centimeters of snow, nothing. We all survived, but it is funny how people get themselves in a pickle. The city's going to shut down. What can we do? They know nothing of what everybody at home has gone through, and I know it's been a tough couple of days. Everybody in Nova Scotia has gone through. I have a very good friend in Sydney, her mom, who shares the same birthday as my mother, same age. They'll both be a certain age. I won't say it because I'm going home in a couple of weeks, so I still want to be let in the door, so I won't tell you how old my mother's going to be. But this lady who shares the birthday with my mom, 153 centimeters, not 5, not 7, and she was non-pulsed because Sydney, Cape Breton, much like Newfoundland and Labrador, the neighbors, the friends, they helped. The neighbor came and shoveled her out. A friend, one of her children, made sure she was fed and nurtured and all of those things. Look, I don't want to cause some national strife this morning, but I think we know more about snow in Atlantic Canada than they do up here. And if you got any good snow stories this morning, it's a Friday, bring them on. Let's hear them. The best one I recall relating to my mother is when Snowmageddon hit. Now, that was snow. Remember that? What's that, 3-4 years ago now? Snowmageddon hit. Behind my mother's home lives a wonderful cousin of mine and her partner. They shimmied down on their belly because their backyard touches ours. Or, sorry, our backyard touches their backyard. Shimmied down on their bellies to shovel my mother out to make sure she was all right. And she's got some great pictures of them coming down the snow. 5 to 7 centimeters is not a lot of snow. Anyway, I think I've beat the snow. I've shoveled the snow away, and we can move on to something else. Now, there's a lot of interesting things happening out there. A lot of traction in the news. I heard Jerry Earle, read our online news site, talking about the P3 project that the provincial government is going to embrace in 2025, I believe it is, for the dividing of the Trans-Canada Highway. Now, Jerry Earle's doing his job. I understand he's speaking up for his members and concerned about what this could mean and privatization creep, I believe Jerry describes it as. I get that. But, again, it's like healthcare. The debate. There's already private service. I'm the son of a contractor who built roads from one end of Newfoundland to the tip of Labrador. The roads already are mostly, 99% of the time, I think, built by private contractors who put a ton of money into the community. The difference, of course, and Jerry would point that out, and he's welcome to call, is that the highway would be operated, and this happens in other parts of the country and the world, sometimes with success, sometimes not with success, but the highway, as I understand it, would be operated by a private consortium. So that is a little bit different, to be fair, and maintenance of that highway would likely fall to whoever the private consortium operator chooses to maintain the highway. So yes, that would have an impact on some of the people Jerry represents, and I get that. But, again, we already have private snow clearing in Newfoundland and Labrador, or contracted out snow clearing. I'm using the term private to say the public dollars are being used to employ somebody to do that work. But do you really get wound up about this if you're not a member of NAPE? If you're a member of NAPE, of course, you can call as well, too. But, is this something to get overly concerned about. I mean, there will be lots of people, not to diminish anybody personally, who would say, well, we could still do a hell of a lot better job with snow clearing and other road maintenance and work if we had private companies doing it. There are others who will say maybe the people who Jerry represents or the provincial government has on the payroll for them can be deployed elsewhere. I am trying to care about this. I am trying to get worked up about this, but I can't. I don't know if that was good or bad, but if you want to talk about it, please give us a call. It seems to be getting some attention in the news, as is this one, as we head into the middle of winter. I think we're officially in the middle of winter. The Canadian Mental Health Association has been talking about this for a while, and in Newfoundland and Labrador, they're now doing a 4-day week. And they argue, I can see the validity in the argument, that their employees are more productive, people are happier, and their health is better, which is always so very important. Where are you on 4-day weeks? Look, I'm of two minds on it. I think if it works for you and it can work for your employer and employee alike, great, as long as you're still able to serve the people you need to serve, so you'd have to have staggering. But equally, I know people who are happy when they work, who want to work, who find social community when they work, who have a greater sense of purpose. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Nothing wrong with caring about what you do. So if you have thoughts on that, let me know. I've been very busy the last couple of weeks speaking about the medical assistance in dying legislation and the exclusion of mental health from the criteria right now to be eligible for medical assistance in dying. So as you know, I care a lot about mental health, so I don't want anybody to think I'm diminishing what the Canadian Mental Health Association is doing or their idea. I just want a bigger picture on work, its value mentally to people, its social connections, and the importance of looking at the whole picture before we start a parade to 4-day work weeks. They tried that here in Ontario many years ago. People who are listening who lived up here then or have family up here will remember the so-called Ray days when Bob Ray was the premier, was going to have 4-day work week. That was about saving money. It didn't work very well. But hey, you got thoughts on that? You're sitting in the snow. Give us a call on that. Equally big topic up here. You heard Brian talk about it in the news, the reframing of carbon price rebates. And they're going to use the word I just used. They're going to call them rebates. Is that going to help the federal Liberals' political fortunes? And particularly when the portion of the rebate, according to what Brian has reported this morning, at least in the April checks, or the checks that will come out by April 1st, is going to be less for Newfoundland and Labrador because, according to the reporting, the new reduction of the surcharge on home heating oil will be factored in there, so that will balance, that will require less of a rebate because I assume the thinking and the math is you have received a break there. Does that matter? Does it not matter? How are you feeling about this? Is there anything that the federal Liberals can do right now beyond perhaps having the Prime Minister step aside that is going to change the way many of you are looking at them and looking at the federal political scene? You want to talk about that? We can talk about that. We can talk about the rebranding. So much more. The other thing that Ben and Jerry Lynn talked about this morning is something that really grates at me, and it's something that's also popped its head up these days, and that is our Canadian Security Intelligence Service says the threats against the anti-gender movement are growing and to expect more violence. And we've had lots of able advocates call this program and say that. Now our security services are saying that. Should we not be concerned about this? Should we not be worried about this? And should we not understand if we have a role in propagating, whether deliberately or not, aspects of anger that inflate it to hate that people seize on? Something to think about. It's something that I worry about, particularly in larger centers where people are prone to be more violent, though it's not when they're put together with crowds who share a similar view and they act out. We've seen that big and small towns, but certainly something that is of concern to us all. Now, before I go to a break, I want to throw one bouquet out. Just a bouquet to somebody at the other place, the CBC, and many of you know I do work over there too on television, but I just want to say congratulations and thank you to Anthony Germain at the CBC. He has done wonderful work throughout his career with the public broadcaster. I first got to know Anthony when he was the host of the national program, The House here. Of course, he moved to Newfoundland with his wife, Doris. He's made incredible contributions, impressive fellow, went back and got his education degree. Well, I would always prefer you listen to VOCM. I can certainly understand why you've tuned in and heard Anthony over the years here and when he's been on assignment in China. I know he's stepping aside in mid-March to do other things, and if he goes into the classroom full-time, you want to be in there with him. He's a smart fellow, an engaging fellow. So well done, Anthony. You've had a wonderful run, and it's been a pleasure to know you and watch you and learn from you. So I wish you nothing but the best. And now, time for our first break here on VOCM's Open Line. When we come back, your calls from the snow, outside the snow, dancing in the snow, I don't care. Just give me a call here. I'm Tim Powers. This is VOCM's Open Line. Back with you shortly. Good morning, everybody. Tim Powers in here as noted for Patty today, the last day of the week. Hope the snow shoveling is going well. Now, I didn't know this, but I'm glad I now do, and it's an important topic to talk about. It is Sexual Health Week, and we have with us now Dr. Debbie Kelly. Debbie is the professor and special advisor of practice innovation at Memorial School of Pharmacy. Debbie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Tim?
I am good. When they gave me this topic yesterday, I thought, okay, am I going to have to do a lot of reading and speak instructively and well about this? But then they said Debbie can do all of that. So thank you for that, Debbie. But it's a fascinating topic. Not sexual health, of course, is fascinating, but the role of pharmacists. And that's what you want to talk about, because whether it's in Newfoundland and Labrador or Ontario, where I am now, I think the people you are training and are graduating and are running pharmacies are doing so much more work these days and have the ability, thankfully, to do more. And one of the things they play a lead role in is sexual health, counseling and medication distribution, prescribing of contraceptions. And you have a study called the Approach Study. So why don't you tell us about the study in a moment, but what it is your pharmacists get often called upon to do as it relates to sexual health?
Yeah, so the theme for this year's Sexual Health Week is Sexual Health is for Everyone. And I think, when we think about sexual health, oftentimes we go to sort of the negative places. We think about, when things go wrong. But really, it's important to think about sexual health as an extension. It's part of our health and really self-care. And I love that they tied it into Valentine's Day.
That's very smart.
It's a great time to talk about sexual health and doing things as part of self-love and self-care. And so there was a national survey that came out that tells us that 40% of Canadians access sexual health services last year. And most of them get those services from their family doctors and sexual health clinics, which is fantastic. But that same survey tells us that 42% of people experience barriers to access, and over 70%, I guess not surprisingly, experience some embarrassment, or they're concerned about embarrassment or judgment when they seek sexual health services. And that's why I kind of wanted to talk about the role that pharmacists can play. Because as you said, there's a lot of ways that pharmacists can really support sexual health. So providing advice and education, you can go to the pharmacy counter and ask for advice over the counter, or we've got those private rooms where you can have a more discreet conversation. And pharmacists in many provinces now can prescribe for contraception. So you can get your birth control pills through the pharmacy. There's also access to the morning after pill, and really just sort of that advice for wellness. So one of the things that kind of led us to this approach study and this idea of offering more sexual health services through pharmacies is because we have those barriers. And so many people don't have access to a family doctor or may not live close to a sexual health clinic. So in this study, it's called the Approach Study, and we have a website if people want some information. It's just called approachstudy.ca. We're offering testing for multiple infections, including syphilis, as well as HIV and hepatitis C. And that's available free of charge, and it uses a finger stick blood sample. It's really quick.
Okay.
We offer a couple of different testing options where people can, so it's just like checking your blood glucose if you have diabetes. It's a finger stick blood sample. And we have rapid tests where you can get your results for the HIV or hepatitis C on the spot, or there's a dry blood spot test where one sample can test for all three of those infections, and you can get those results from the pharmacist when they're available a few weeks later. But the really neat thing about the testing study is that, yeah, you get to find out what your status is, but you also get education. Mm-hmm. And so the people that are going through this study are telling us, there's really, in fact, the results are really overwhelmingly positive so far. Over 90% of people are saying they're not experiencing stigma when they go through the pharmacy for testing. And they said that pharmacy testing normalizes that testing experience, because sometimes it's like, I don't need that. You know what I mean? I'm in a relationship. I don't need that right now. But, if anybody, perhaps you have a new partner, or maybe you've had multiple partners since the last time you were tested. And in fact, over 30% of people who've come out for the study have never had testing for some of these infections. So if you've never had a test, go out and get tested. Just know your status. Get that peace of mind. If it turns out you have an infection, we can get you linked with, treatment. Hepatitis C and syphilis are curable infections, but you don't know what you have unless you actually have the test. So we're just really encouraging people to think about it, maybe take this step to promote your own self-care and get some education. The study's ongoing until the end of March, and we have 12 pharmacies throughout the island portion of the province that are participating. And, that's what I wanted to share this morning.
Well, I've got two questions to follow up on what you were sharing, and thank you. That's so informative, and I would encourage people to look at the approach study, to go to the website, and we'll give it a plug again later on. On stigma, Debbie, first question, stigma and social media. We've certainly seen the negative and heard the negative of abuse and harassment and the exploitation of people through social media. So we know the negative, but sometimes there is a storytelling of an empowered sexuality that happens through social media platforms. How has social media in general impacted the stigma positively or negatively around sexual health? Or do you have data on that you can speak to?
That's certainly, I'm not an expert in that area, but I would agree with everything that you just said. I think, social media is a really powerful tool in society, then we can all attest to that. And using that power for good is something that we really try to encourage. In fact, as we tried to promote and make people aware of the possibility of participating in the study, we have peer research partners. So people with lived experience, people who identify with a lot of groups who experience stigma and discrimination, and they've come forward and they said, let me make a video about my experience with this study. And, we posted that on our website. Again, to your point of trying to put those positive stories out there, I think, hearing from someone's experience is a really powerful way to reduce our own anxieties or fear of the unknown. I think we do worry a lot about it. When we were preparing the pharmacists to participate in the study, we did extensive training with them, including stigma-based training. And so our peer research partners, as well as one of my colleagues, Dr. Kyle Wilby at Dalhousie University, who does a lot of work with 2S LGBTQ plus communities, talked about stigma, how stigma can really keep people from engaging in health services, not just sexual health services, but just in general. If you think that you're going to be discriminated against, or you think that you're going to be asked questions that you feel uncomfortable answering, or people are going to judge you, it holds you back. And, we all need to be aware of our own biases. And that was one of the things that we had the pharmacy teams do, is talk to their teams about what are our biases and our unconscious kind of beliefs, and then how can we make these environments more welcoming so people do feel comfortable asking the questions, engaging in the conversation. So social media is one piece of it, but I think there's also a lot of self-reflection that we all need to do as healthcare providers and people working with communities.
And that's my second question. I'm so glad to hear there's training, but we've all probably seen or been part of an encounter where a female seeking contraception or sexual health advice meets a male who's a doctor or a pharmacist. How does gender and that gender encounter influence stigma?
Whether it's stigma or, I think there are powers.
And stigma may not be the right word. I ask you as a professional to define it.
Sure. I think there are always power differentials anytime we interact with people throughout society, and certainly in healthcare, that's something to be aware of. We take something called a trauma-informed approach.
Okay, trauma-informed, okay.
Yeah, and so, basically what that refers to is that, and there's a lot of literature around this, that people who have experienced trauma may react in different ways than one would expect someone who has not, than we might expect. So, for example, your example of, say, a female or a person with female genitalia who needs sexual health, maybe a Pap test, they may be very reluctant to have a male or someone who presents as a male to do that test if they have experienced perhaps intimate partner violence or, other types of violence. So it's something that, again, I think healthcare providers are becoming more aware of, and we are getting more training in. But, one of the things that I enjoy most about my job is all of the research that I do is with community. And I've learned so much from our community partners. Because there's no better classroom to learn than from people who have lived experience. And they've really helped us sort of call us out when we've done something that could be off-putting, and given us some direction about how to be more sensitive, because it's not a one-size-fits, right? My trauma may not be the same as someone else's trauma, and how I react in certain situations may not be the same as someone else. And so I think it's really about being person-centered and just having that awareness and that sensitivity that this might be uncomfortable. And even if I'm okay talking about it, the person I'm talking to may not be okay. And how can I make them feel comfortable and give them sort of the power to initiate the conversation or to continue with the conversation or to shut it down and, not damage that relationship with that person so they know they can come back if and when the time is right for them.
Thank you. That was so well explained. Dr. Debbie Kelly, the Professor and Special Advisor, Practice Innovation, Memorial University, and the study, www.approachstudy.ca. Check it out. Thank you, Debbie. Great conversation. Appreciated having you this morning.
Thanks so much, Tim. Have a great day.
You too. All right. When we come back, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Senator David Wells is going to talk about Verbo and the apology he got for the Eyes the Buys Verbo video that was not very well received, not just in Newfoundland and Labrador, but around the world. We'll talk to Senator Wells, and we'll also talk to Merv Wiseman when we come back here on VOCM's Open Line. Back to Open Line. Tim Powers in for Patty today. Well, the ad, the chickens, Eyes the Buys, the irritation, the anger, you pick your descriptor that Verbo caused at home. Got global attention. We were certainly talking about it here in the media in Ontario earlier in the week. Verbo had issued a statement saying that they were removing the ad after its horrid reception here in the province. Then Senator David Wells, who's going to join me in a second, got a note from Expedia with more clarifications and a slightly bigger apology. And I'm going to bring him on now. David, how are you this morning?
I'm fine, Tim.
Did you slay the chicken or slay Verbo? I'm not quite sure here.
You know what? All I did, our friend Mark Dobbin, who you know, and I know, he posted the early flag on it, and I a little bit later down in his Twitter thread, I just said agreed. That was my only input until, of course, I heard everyone was familiar with the firestorm, and then Expedia reached out to me. I didn't reach out to them at all.
Interesting.
My position, they didn't want it to get bigger than than it actually ended up getting.
And so that first on that, do you again, was it Expedia USA or was somebody from the Hunter Dowd is from the Expedia group? Do you know where he was calling from or emailing from? Any idea?
I'm just going to have a quick look. No, it's not clear on his on his email. Oh, it says Manager, Government and Corporate Affairs, Canada.
Okay, all right. Well, that's interesting.
So
he saw a Canadian senator expressing dissatisfaction, and he quickly leaped. So what did he precisely say, David, in the email?
I'll just read a little bit of it. I'm reaching out on behalf of Expedia Group to offer my apologies for the Verbo ad. I know that many have expressed disappointment, especially individuals from Newfoundland and Labrador. While I know this was an honest mistake, and actually, Tim, I believe it was. I just think it was a lack of due diligence, and meant in no way to depict the province in any negative way. We certainly understand the due diligence, there we go, as it pertains to the song choice, and should have been better. For your awareness, I did have a good conversation with Minister Crocker to relay our apologies. So I had my staff write back to say, thanks for your note. On behalf of Senator Wells, I would like to follow up by asking if there will be any steps to change or remove the song, or if this is simply an apology. And he wrote back just a simple line: "Steps have been taken to remove the ad."
Wow.
So I wasn't highly engaged in this. Obviously, I heard it. We all have busy lives, and this took up a small slice. But I think the recognition that they made a mistake, the commitment to remove it. I had no outrage on it. That wasn't part of my reaction. My reaction was more, Tim, seriously, that's what they're doing, and I mean, it was clear that this was done by an ad agency. Anyone doing a Super Bowl ad that pays $7 million US for 30 seconds, they don't do that in house.
It's fascinating, too, because these ad agencies, as you well know, David, you would think they did a competitive analysis of the marketplace. And had they bothered to do that, they would have seen the volume of provincial government and other agency ads that are out there depicting the beauty, the rustic nature, the European flavor, describe it as you will, of Newfoundland and Labrador. Do you think, let me give you the softball to hit out, if your X handle didn't have Senator on it, we would still be waiting to get a further clarification?
You know what? I get that my position does carry some responsibilities and influence. I get that, and I use that judiciously, and I don't abuse it at all, and I recognize my place. In that realm, and I'm fortunate to be able to have a voice there. So I don't carry any extra thought about it other than my recognition of it. Probably not. Although when the province got involved as well, that also carries weight. I did it just as an individual, although an individual who happens to be a senator. So, any company that relies on not just the public for their business, but public goodwill for their business, has to be extremely sensitive in today's lightning speed, news gets out fast world. And to their credit, they reacted quickly and appropriately.
Well, and let's hope it puts it all to rest. And hey, take credit for a role you played. And certainly my question was not implying you were throwing your title around, but I know how many of these corporations work, and I suspect, as you do, and I suspect they thought, we could be in trouble if we don't respond here. So who cares how it came about? It came about, and I think that's a good thing for Newfoundland and Labrador. David, thanks for the time today, and thanks for the role you played in all this.
My pleasure, Tim, and thanks for the great work that you do and that VOCM does, especially in times like this where there's a major snowstorm, and VOCM does a great job in getting the word out on closures, road closures, school closures, all the things that the public needs to know. Them doing that since I can remember. And great job.
Don't age us, David. Now, don't age us. Come on, we're only young here. Anyway, you have a good weekend. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you, Tim.
Take care. Senator David Wells talking about the response he got from the Expedia Media Group related to the Verbo ad, which I think has now disappeared into the ether. Now, another well-known figure in this province, somebody I always enjoyed talking to, Merv Wiseman. Merv, how are you?
Well, I'm very well, Tim. It's great to hear your voice. And look, I'm calling to talk about a press release that was put out by an organization I'm involved with called the Fisheries Protective Co-op. I want to address some of the items that's in that release. Before I do, though, if I may, I want to extend my condolences. You talked about Vince Gallant in your preamble there. And I have some very, very fond memories, aside from, the overall impression that we all had of Vince Gallant, but some very personal impressions created from all the mornings that he would call looking for briefings when I worked as a search and rescue coordinator.
Of course,
yeah. And you could always expect that call between 5 and 6 o'clock, sometimes earlier, and we'd go into a full briefing, and of course you'd always have a chance to chat a little bit, and that's one of my greatest memories. And I do recall as well, just to let you know that his abilities and his consciousness of issues and so on, that when the Marine Rescue Sub Center was slated to close, he called me personally to extend his help, he said, in any way that I can, notwithstanding that he was a journalist and so on, but that he felt there were some things he could do. So I thought that was a great gesture, a great personality.
And it also shows, Merv, just before you go on, too, old school journalists working the phone all the time, knowing the people they needed to talk to get the information they needed to get their stories. And that's not a slight at younger journalists, but certainly they made the effort to build the relationship so that he could call you at 5 or 6 in the morning. You weren't going to bawl his head off, and he'd be able to tell the story. You'd be able to get your important search and rescue message out. Anyway, go ahead. Tell us about this issue.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very quickly, because I know time is of the essence here. We've been working, when I say we, there's a group of us, including fish harvesters, owners, enterprises, owners, operators, and so on. A steering group set up to engineer, if you will, this fisheries co-op, and myself and Ryan Cleary, of course, is involved in organizing and so on. But I have to tell you that my role is more of an advisory capacity, and to advise on governance, if you will, process and governance, and as well as advocate where I think we need to advocate. But really the grunt work, the on-the-ground work, the heavy lifting, as they say, has really been done by Ryan Cleary and his organization, his research and so on, and boots on the ground, if you will. So I have to say that up front. Look, we now have achieved an important milestone with that organization in that we are now officially incorporated into the registrar of companies in this province as a fisheries protective co-op. Now, if you notice some resemblance to the Coker days.
Yes, I was going to say, where's William Coker? He's going to pop up here in a moment. Go ahead.
Well, I know. I'm a great admirer of him. Among other things, William Coker, was a farmer before he got into.
Was he really?
Yes, he was indeed. And so I'm also passing that prerequisite as well, because I'm a farmer myself, involved in the fur industry. I digress. Sorry about that. Anyway, nevertheless, some of the principles, of course, that goes back a long ways. It's still alive and well today, and our ambition, of course, is to, with the organization, is to work in the collective interest and work collectively, with the fish harvesters. out there, some 3,000 or so at this point in time, notwithstanding the fact that they're currently involved with a lot of, processors and buyers in various fashions and so on. But, our ambition and our objectives is really no different from some of the things that we're already seeing in some of the co-ops that's been organized in the province, and the Fogo Co-op comes to mind. For example, Pity Arbor Co-op, the shrimp, the Labrador Shrimp Company, although I don't think that's officially a co-op, but certainly a social enterprise approach to things. And, that said as well, our intention is not necessarily in any way to be operating in an adversarial role with people that's already in the business, or an adversarial role with government and so on. But we want to work collaboratively, if you will, with all these organizations, because we think in order to advance where we're going, that has to be part and parcel of it.
Murph, can I ask you a question on that? Because you triggered me with the word collaborative. So, look, I have watched the various groups pop up in the fisheries advocacy space. I understand why they do more. So you're not of the view in this case that what you have created takes away from maybe a one-voice approach to fisheries issues. You believe there needs to be more than one voice, and that can have an empowering impact for the industry? The fishers?
No question. Yeah, absolutely, Tim. Look, leading up to this co-op organization, we were involved with what we called CNL, Seaforth Enterprise, and it was made up of, it was an association of professional fish harvesters that was out there who wanted to be professional, much the same as Teachers Association, so on and so forth. Where I'm going with that. And so it was felt that it was very important that their voice be out there, messages be out there in order to, to protect, if you will, their interests and where they're going. But, I think one of the things, and, this is the bottom line to a lot of the things and where we're going, is that we've learned that, look, if we're going to be taken seriously, we have to be a player. Yeah. We have to be a player somewhere between the bottom and the top, and the bottom, I could say, being, the catching of the fish and so on, and the top being the marketing, and right to the plate, from ocean to plate, if you will. And I think, I don't think anybody out there, whether it's government or whether it's the present buyers that's out there now, would want to or question why, we would want to be fitting into that equation. It's extremely important. And it's not only important for the fish harvesters themselves, but for the communities that works for them. And the Fogo Co-op is no better example than that, right?
Okay. I got about 30 seconds to let you sum up there, Merv, so go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Look, we have short and long-term goals. And I want to say, coming into this summer, we hope to get into some levels of collaboration with existing processors, whether or not it's the traditional or independent processors, to try to bring our product, to the marketplace. But in the long term, we will be looking to get more proactive and to get in the position to be able to advocate for a lot of the things that's going to make some of our fish harvesters a little more independently driven, if you will, things like the Fisheries Loan Board. So there will be some advocacy, but there's many other items there, and I'm sure we'll get down in the weeds and we'll have more discussion on this as the time comes, Tim.
We will indeed. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the update, and we will pay attention to it here at VOCM. Have a good weekend, Merv. You take care.
Okie doke. Thank you so much for the time. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, that's Merv Wiseman. Just a reminder, too, you can get me on X, Twitter, whatever it's called these days, @PowersTim. You can email us at openline@vocm.com. We're going to take a break and come back with more of your calls after that. Welcome back to Open Line. Tim Powers in today. We're going to go to line 3. Eugene Nippard, my friend, Air Ambulance. How's the battle going on that front?
Well, good morning, Tim. Another good program on the go, Tim. It's a battle, but I'll get into that in a minute. Vince Gallant passed away. And, a voice that was in our kitchen for many years, and I've talked to the man many times, but I've never met the man in person. But by talking to my friend Terry Hart, that was with VOCM for many, many, many years, he said it was like VOCM was like family. So my condolences go out to his family, his friends, and to everyone at VOCM. I'm sure you're feeling the effect of it today.
Well, that's very, very kind of you. I know it's been a tough blow, particularly for people who've known Vince for a very long time in our studio at Kenmount Road. So that's very kind of you, Eugene. Thank you.
Yes, Wood, and you're welcome. I want to talk about air ambulance. We've been on the go since 2018, our air ambulance medical transport advocacy group, and the big concern for us was to have an air ambulance ready for the patient as quick as possible, and relocated. We were trying to get air ambulances based in Central, which would be closer to the patient. So the latest from the minister now, Minister Osborne, is that as of 1st of April now, when the RFP takes effect, we're going to have, instead of the 4 air ambulances based in St. John's and 1 in Goose Bay, it's going to be 2 in St. John's and 3 in Goose Bay. We know, and I know because I follow the flights, we got many. The majority of our flights are out of Labrador. And I've heard the MHAs in Labrador complain. We have had people that have been there for like 2 days waiting for an air ambulance. We've had people died waiting for an air ambulance because of not enough planes, not enough medical personnel. So that's a plus. We're still going to keep lobbying and try to get one based in Central. Now, whether that will happen, we don't know, but all we can do is keep trying. We do believe it was in Central Newfoundland to be closer to the patient. There will be an Air Force One based in Gander. We got the confirmation on that, and that'll be a shuttle, same-day cardiac catheterization operation, same-day operation. So that's good, and we got some good news for the people on the West Coast. Like I know my friend Dave Callahan's been complaining we need coverage for Stephenville, and yes, that Air Force One will be taken in Stephenville also. So that's good news. So things is moving along, and hopefully we can, and I do say, Tim, that these air ambulances may be positioned elsewhere if the needs of the operations are there. Okay. So who knows? Hopefully, they will consider putting an air ambulance in Gander down the road. We hope, along with the Air Force One. So things is moving along, and we're open for the best.
Well, I appreciate the update. The whole air ambulance service, the air medical air service is so vital everywhere, but particularly in Newfoundland and Labrador, and you and others are keeping your eye on it, and we're very fortunate that you are. You have a good weekend, Eugene. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I forgot, and I'll make it quick. There's also going to be 24/7 coverage now that we didn't have before. We only had up to 10 p.m. in Goose Bay some time ago, but now it's going to be 24/7. That's a big one, very important.
That's very important. People that don't stop needing medical services after 10 p.m. often. So appreciate that update. You take care, Eugene.
Yes, thank you for your time. You're doing an excellent job. You always do. Appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good day. All right, that was Eugene Nippert on Air Ambulance. You heard me talking about MAID earlier. We have a caller now, Kaylee, on line 2, who wants to talk about the Medical Assistance in Dying program and her perspective on it. Kaylee, how are you?
Hi, good day. Hello, Newfoundland. I've been fighting this battle for about 2 years now, and I cannot afford to keep food in my fridge anymore. I'm unable to work. And I can't even work with the Department of Seniors and whatever they call themselves now, because you call in there, you get these ghouls who just say, oh, you're getting the maximum amount a human being or a single person gets. And I'm like, okay, that's great. My rent's $900 a month. And the food prices, every time it hikes up, I'm like, okay, what can I not afford this week? And it's gotten to a point that now with April coming, it's like, oh, they're raising the minimum wage. It's like, okay, everything's going to go up again. But I won't get anything different. I still get $130 a week to live off of all of these. And that includes my bills. That includes, like, medicine that isn't covered. And I cannot get government to call me back. I can't get a dialogue going. It's always just, it's like, oh, yeah, it's bad. Whatever, click. It's like, okay. So, I mean, I'm like shaking here. It's like, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? No one wants to hire me because of my disability. So do I just start?
That's a terrible plight you're in. Have you, and again, if there's a coldness in this suggestion, it's certainly not meant to be, and that is, have you tried to go through your Member of Parliament, though, as you say, you're looking for provincial funding, or your local member of the House of Assembly? They can be very strong advocates for their constituents, and no luck.
Jeff Dwyer said I should write a letter, and he'll bring it to the House of Assembly, and that's it. Wouldn't even talk to me. So it's that sort of thing, you know. It's like, again, you can't really, like, have a dialogue. You can't really work with people. And I'll tell you, too, it's like if there's some sort of discrepancy when it comes to, like, dealing with income support, you know, you be honest with them, and suddenly they're like, oh, that's everything's bad. We're going to get cut off. Like, it is such a sort of Damocles. And if you're somebody who, like, you rely on this, I'm always scared I'm going to lose my drug coverage. I'm scared I'm going to, you know, like, not have enough food. I've been going to bed hungry these nights, and I'm really sick. I'm, like, actually deteriorating. And I mean, I'm talking to my social worker about MAID because I don't want to starve to death. I don't want to see myself, like, get 5 different diseases that are chronic and still be in this situation.
And just before I ask you a question, well, I'll give you some information that was just given to me. So let me ask the question first. So,
yeah,
what has your social worker said in response to your talking about MAID? Because as I'm sure she has said to you, and as you know, it's a very lengthy process that requires informed consent, doctors signing off on it, and the like. What counseling has she given you?
She doesn't like the idea. She supports me. That is truly what I want. And the problem is, it isn't truly what I want. But what are my options? I mean, that's the thing. Right now, as I currently would say it, I mean, maybe it's a stronger language, but the way that Canada is currently running, in Newfoundland particularly is running, is soft eugenics. If you're somebody who can't work 60-plus hours a week, you don't really get to eat. You don't deserve to have a roof over your head. At least in this province before, I always managed to have my bottom pyramid covered. You know, I had a roof over my head. I had enough food. It doesn't really take a lot to make me happy. I mean, I'm somebody who, like, I don't want a car. I don't want a fancy house. I just want a small life with a dog.
Quality of life and dignity.
Bingo. That's all I want, you know? And it's like, no, sorry, you don't meet the criteria. Goodbye. Click. I remember asking about people with my disability, and they were like, well, do you have an IQ above 70? Yes. Can't help you. Click.
Yeah, so sometimes you don't fit in the box nicely, and that doesn't feel very nice for you or anybody else in these circumstances. I was just given some information, Kaylee. Maybe it's helpful to you, maybe it's not. Maybe you've tried there, but have you tried the coalition of persons with disabilities?
I have not, actually. This is a new one for me. I've tried the Autism Society. They have not got back to me. Tried them a few times. But, yeah.
Well, here I will give you the number, and all of Newfoundland can hear the number too, because there may be others who are struggling as you are. So it's the coalition. And thank you. No, it's really important that you did. Coalition of Persons with Disability. The number is 709-722-7011. And the executive director is a person by the name of Nancy Reed. I don't know if Nancy will be able to help you or not, but you are clearly a very persistent person, as you should be, as it's your health. Give her a call. And look, is there anything else you'd like to add? Because, again, I don't think you're alone. I can give you about a minute or so. What else would you like to add? What else can you share?
The Fury government here is completely tone deaf. We have a high instance of ADHD. That means people who our brains run quicker. We need more sugar. They put a sugar tax on. It made things even harder. And when the prices of food went up, they should have said, well, we can't do this. We'll try a different way. Which brings another question. If they're making so much of a sugar tax, how come I'm not seeing any actual improvements in, like, the lives of people like myself or even my workers who help me? It's just so hard. And I see a lot of F. Trudeau, and I'm like, no, it's not Trudeau. It's all provincial. F. Fury is how I think.
Well, Hey, you're living in a very difficult spot, and I can understand your. I'm not living in your space, but I would probably be very angry if I was. And look, we may get people who call in response who may want to reach out to you. So our producer Dave will let you know. Thank you, Kaylee. It takes a lot of courage to call for a first-time caller. That I'm sure you wish you were calling on something else, but thank you for telling your story, and thank you for perhaps helping other people. And we hope you get help too.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the platform for these few minutes. It means a lot.
All right. Good luck to you. Thank you. All right. That was a tough call. If you have feedback you want to give, Kaylee, I'm sure we'll continue to listen. Please do give us a call if you know somewhere where she might be able to get some help to further her and to help advance knocking that struggle back. Give us a call. Time for news here, though, now on VOCM. Back with you after that. Welcome back to Open Line. Tim Powers in for Patty Daly. Well, you've probably heard the ads. The Beer Canada ads are in heavy rotation. Bob and Doug McKenzie talking about the increased excise duty, the increase in that tax, which is going to go up by 4.7% in April, which means your beer is going to be more expensive. And that's really irritating a lot of people and challenging some businesses in the world of suds. And I'm going to talk with one of those owners now. Phil Maloney is the owner and general manager of the Bannerman Brewery. Phil, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Tim. How you doing?
Good. Got to compliment you. Live down in the street, or when my mother lives down the street, been in. You've turned that fire hall into a wonderful spot. I have enjoyed my time there, and as a fellow microbrewery owner, I have a ownership stake in one here in Ottawa. Glad to see you doing so well. So I also have self-interest here, Phil, just to get that out the door as well. So let's just rant and rave about the federal government. I know in our case, and our brewery operates here in Ontario, that this excise tax is an irritant. I'll describe it that way, that the bigger challenge for us is the provincial tax that's applied to breweries. Where does it fit in Newfoundland and Labrador, and how does it impact you and fellow brewers in the province?
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, where it fits is kind of a little bit all over the map depending on the size of the brewery. I'll say for us, yeah, for sure. So, we're down here in this fire hall. It might look like a big building, but, we're a relatively small brewery comparatively, certainly compared to the big guys. And even some of our friends, at Kitty Bitty, Lamb Wash, and Banish, they've got quite a big output. So for us, we're primarily focused on in-house sales as much as we can. And then we've got some, packaged beer going out. But I will say, I guess the increase, it is an irritant for sure, with the excise tax going up. And then, the NLC has a tax hike of, I think, 2.5% coming up in April. Overall, it's not going to sink us. It's not big enough that it's that bad, but it is certainly an irritant. Any price increase in these times is tough. We've navigated, well, you're well aware of what we've all had to navigate, but, we opened in 2019. We had one good summer kind of under our belt, and then one Christmas season, and then everything shut down. So we've kind of been up and down ever since then. But, an irritant is a great way to describe this tax rate hike for sure.
And what do customers say to you, Phil? And again, I'll use our experience. We work really hard to try and keep prices constant. And customers do understand that sometimes you have to put it up a little bit. They'll pay a little bit more. Our experience is for craft beer than they will pay for the more traditional big brew brands. But what are you hearing from your customers, and how do you manage that when governments say you need to pay us more?
For sure, yeah. I mean, managing customer expectations is.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Yeah, there you go.
But it's of paramount importance, really. Kind of how we're perceived. We obviously are a small business. We, with any price increase, we don't want to come off as greedy or what have you. I do think, though, people understand, the world we live in and what's been going on. And we've had some very small price increases. I'm talking like, a quarter a pint or, 8 or 10 cents a can, kind of just to combat the price, the taxation hikes that are coming in, just to kind of just to combat them, really. And people have been understanding it. Also, there hasn't really been much, backlash, I would say. People are, relatively accepting of the fact that, we're in this inflationary time where the price of everything's going up, and we're just creeping up a little bit, just to kind of, prevent, negative effects from coming down from these tax increases.
Last question for you. Look, again, the Ontario example, and I don't know if it's applicable in Newfoundland, that's why I ask. Ontario's made a big deal about the importance of craft breweries in local economies, particularly in smaller centres. And you and I can point to places in Newfoundland and Labrador where the new local craft brewery, or the one that's been there for 10 years, is a real driver for the economy. Do you see, both in Newfoundland and Labrador and Canada, the enthusiasm that is being expressed for breweries matched by the policies to help enable breweries and other small businesses to succeed? Can't get that word out. To succeed.
That's a tough one. I think there are a lot of, there were a lot of programs in place, certainly 4 or 5 years ago when we opened. There was government assistance, to help get up and running. It's a big capital endeavor to open up a brewery. And I think a common misconception is that it's, everyone sees breweries and they're busy and it's this, get rich quick overnight thing. Then you see a lot of breweries, are in planning phases, and then some of them don't end up happening. And I do think there is a common misconception of that. I believe there was a lot of assistance in play. I know a lot of funding bodies have since kind of reduced funding, new breweries, because, honestly, the market is getting more and more, I don't want to say flooded, but, we're all friends in this industry, and it is getting crowded. Shelf space is getting crowded. It is what it is. And I feel like Ontario really feels that. They've got a much larger customer base than we do, obviously just by sheer population, and also the percentage of people drinking craft beer is much higher than Newfoundland. But these breweries, I don't know the stat, I don't have it offhand, but there's so many breweries closing every year in Ontario, and there's another 20 or 50 or 100 opening. Like it's a crazy just turnover of breweries opening and closing. So I feel like they're really feeling that pinch. Now, mind you, based on our population size, that there's quite a number of breweries, craft breweries on the go right now and in the province. And, it definitely feels a little bit tighter. Like when we opened, we were we couldn't get beer out the door fast enough. And now it's, now we're cold calling NLCs in rural places trying to get beer out there. So things have changed. And I think, as any of these kind of irritants come up, these tax hikes, any kind of expense increase, everyone's everyone's doing their best. Everyone's trying to keep the lights on, keep going. I'm sure we'll come out the other side. Again, it's not like it's going to sink us, or I don't think any of us breweries in Newfoundland, but it obviously will affect the larger producers much more than it affects us.
Now, Phil, you've popped the myth that craft brewing is just a glamorous, glowing game, and we're all rolling in the dough. I'm shocked, sir, you've done that today. Anyway, appreciate your call, appreciate the input, and keep it up. You guys have as you've mentioned many of your peers, but you, Kitty Vitty, there's lots of you, Port Blandford, tons of you. Keep it up. You're great for the economy. You offer great service, and if you're in St. John's and you're by the Hotel Newfoundland or whatever it's called now, the Sheraton, go in and avail at Bannerman Brewery. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much. And please do come by the shop, and I'll be out at the Frosty Festival tonight in Mount Pearl pouring some beer along with a slew of other brewery owners. So if you're in the area, pop on in.
Thanks, Phil. Good luck. Take care.
Thanks, Tim. See ya.
All right, that was Phil Maloney, the owner, general manager of Bannerman Brewery. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Ken Green is going to talk to us in response to some of the comments Merv had, and Eddie St. Croix, the chair external of St. John's Pride, is going to talk about the report from CSIS concerning anti-gender movement violence worries that they have. Back with those calls after this break. Welcome back to Open Line. Now going to go to Ken Green, himself a fisher who wanted to talk about the lack of movement from the Fisheries Department on licenses. And I think, Ken, you wanted to maybe offer a comment on Merv, though up to you. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Yeah, I'm Merv there. Well, I supported Ryan and Merv on this committee. Matter of fact, I am a member of the committee.
Okay.
I'm on the steering committee, and I don't mind saying it. And from my perspective as an independent fish harvester, it's all about freedom from the processor, who, by the way, got us all by the neck. We got no freedom. We're told when to go out, when to come in, how much, and blah, blah, blah. Last year I sold some fish one day, and just because I went on Paddy's show one morning and I complained about the grade that I got.
Yeah.
2 days after, the buyer cut me off, and he said he was done with me. And
is that right?
Oh yeah, they're done with me. They want nothing else to do with me, and they weren't going to buy nothing else from me, whatever. So I went to the union. The union said let us handle it. So I let them handle it, and right up to the date today, there is nothing. As a matter of fact, the union gave me a letter on last Friday, I think. He sent me an email saying that it is of legal opinion, their legal advisors, to drop the matter, and they wasn't going to have nothing else to do with it. Because he said the processor could come up with some strong arguments as, well, for example, there was a capacity problem. Why they didn't buy fish from me? Well, if there was a capacity problem, I said to myself, the plant was blocked up. I certainly never blocked it up. What they bought from me, and why did they only stop buying from me? You know, that didn't make a bit of sense to me whatsoever. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff like this going on. So right now, the 2024 fishing season is fast approaching. I still don't have a buyer for lobster or cod. There were supposed to be some announcements made last year before Christmas on 2 new processing licenses and a cap on another independent fish processor. His license was supposed to be listed capped, so that would give him more quota to process.
Give us context for those, just if I can interrupt you for 1 second, please. Give us context for those of us who aren't in the industry. What would the normal timeline be in terms of you knowing when you get your licenses and allocations? How traditionally has it worked?
Well, I paid for a groundfish license and a lobster license the other day, and I registered the 2 boats with DFO, and now I got to register them with Transport Canada, which is a new thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was on go last year, but that's another license you got to buy, and then I got to have there's a lot of other licenses. You got dockside monitoring and everything, right, like this stuff. But anyway, the dockside monitoring, that was one of the issues I had there. If I land fish in Carbonear or Harbour Grace or wherever around here, and I'm selling it to this processor that I was selling it to,
right?
He's 100 kilometers away from here. So if my fish was in perfect condition when I sold it to them and I got the receipt on the scales in Carbonear, now that's in their hands. When they get it down to their plant, then they grade it. So there's the potential there for the fish to get soft or something could happen to it on the way. Maybe the ice melted under, God knows what. But in my opinion, in one day, that nothing happened to that fish if it was put in ice and trucked to their plant. The fish should have been in perfect condition when they got it. But I got this grade, which I complained about. And the other thing I wanted to know was, why can't the fish be graded on the wharf in front of us? Because it's my fish until it goes over the scales. After it goes over the scales, it's theirs. Mm-hmm. Now, they can call all that grade C next day. What can I do about it then?
So you're not getting answers from anybody on any of these things that are satisfactory?
I've been the whole winter trying to get hold of the DFO and the provincial fisheries in St. John's, because that's who's handling this kind of thing. It's not DFO. Anyway, I can't get no answer from nobody in there. Somebody did answer the phone, but they turned a deaf ear to everything I was saying. And right now, as a member of this steering committee for this co-op, I want to ask Elvis Lovelace, why is it that he has stalled this announcement on 2 fish processing licenses should have been announced before Christmas, he says, and now here it is in mid-February, and still no announcement.
Okay. Well, you've asked it, and sorry, I was just going to say if he wants to call in, Ken, and answer it, go ahead, sir. I'll give you about another 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan been on with Paddy there a couple of times now, requesting or asking questions why this is not announced, and asking he to announce it and let the fishermen, the harvesters, and the plants that's waiting for it to do something, make some kind of announcement, tell us yes, you're going to have it, or no, you're not getting it, or whatever, so we can go ahead and plan our season.
Yeah,
right now, we're just on the clothesline, hanging in the wind.
Your request seems reasonable to me based on what I know on the surface of it. And as I say, if Elvis Lovelace, Minister Lovelace, is listening, we will pursue that question for you. Thanks, Ken. Good insight. Good luck to you. That has to be exceedingly frustrating what you're going through.
It is, and you wouldn't believe it. But anyway, thank you for your time.
All right, take care. All right, that was Ken Green talking about some of the frustrations he and others are having, getting some direction from the Provincial Department of Fisheries. All right, let me apologize first. I said Eddie St. Croix. It's Eddie St. Croix, so I'm sorry, Eddie, I got your name wrong. He's the co-chair of External at St. John's Pride. Eddie is joining us to talk about the report from CSIS, and you can read the story if you want on CBC's site, but the headline, I'll read it for you, and I'll get Eddie's take on it. CSIS warns that the anti-gender movement poses a threat to extreme violence, and they're saying that events that happened at the University of Waterloo last year, where there was an extreme violent attack against 2 SLGBTQ2+ community members, could lead to more acts of terrorism. Eddie, this has got to be very upsetting to see this, though I suppose it's no surprise, unfortunately, is it?
No, Tim, it's not. Like, it is absolutely upsetting. We had a board meeting last night, and this came up, and it was a conversation that we're kind of used to having now, but it is concerning. It's not surprising to us. It's what we've been telling enforcement agencies here in the city. It's what we've been flagging to the government. It's what the national body has been flagging to the government, and there are real threats that are happening here at home in St. John's and across Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's frustrating for communities like ours because oftentimes, as much as we do appreciate that enforcement agencies will keep us updated on if they see anything. They did security reports to us and monitor things right up until the parade last year, and we're really thankful for that. But sometimes when we have situations where there's targeted hate, like last fall, I don't know if you remember, but we had a situation where somebody started making threats about explosions at parades. And we brought this to the RNC, and the RNC took it and went with it, and they came back to us and they said, given the tools that we have, we can't do anything here. We can't move forward with this, and this person, and people on all sides could see that this person was trying to make a threat just to make people in our community feel afraid. And my challenge back to the Department of Justice and Public Safety, and my challenge back to enforcement agencies when I hear these things is, no, if we acknowledge that there's a security threat, if we acknowledge that a part of a marginalized community in the city doesn't feel safe, then it's not enough to tell me that there's nothing that can be done. What we have identified is that there's a gap in the tools. But it's not enough to say, we know these threats are there, and we know that you live in fear, and we know that you think you might be attacked, but, nothing we can do. That's really cool comfort for people in our community. Mm-hmm. And it's cool comfort for young people that are coming up, especially when they're seeing all of these situations of hate. We have parents that are reaching out to us and saying, my kid is really stressed out. Mm-hmm. Like, do you have supports that I could send? Because this hate that young people are seeing, the same as people that are getting radicalized and that are seeing this types of hate and getting motivated by it, that's starting to trickle down into younger generations, and it's really concerning. And I think that we have to start having a very real discussion in the country and in the province and our communities about what kind of a place do we want to live in. We can have disagreements on policy and those kinds of things, absolutely. That's how Canadian society advances, and it's how we have evolution of rights that we do now. But it's getting very concerning for people in our community to watch these instances of hate, and they're starting to become normalized. People are kind of going, yeah, well, I mean, you and I just had the opening of the discussion. Remember in the fall? And it was like, oh, yeah, I remember when that happened. Yeah. That's becoming our reality, and it's very concerning that, and now that we're seeing it elevated to the Canadian Secret Intelligence Service, that kind of affirms what pride organizations and communities across the country have been saying. And on the one hand, it's kind of like a finally, it's acknowledged. Can we do something about it now? And that's what we're waiting to see.
But in a time, Eddie, when we should be a more open, pluralistically understanding society, because we have learned so much about hate and prejudice and trauma that are created through those circumstances and outright discrimination. I mean, it has to pain you, because it certainly pains me as a heterosexual male, just who's worried about his son's future, just in terms of the nastiness of society, to look to Alberta, to look to New Brunswick, to look to Saskatchewan and see how the whole, I won't even say debate, how those provinces in particular are dealing with trans rights and, legislation notwithstanding clauses, things that seem to be born entirely out of ignorance or political opportunity. I'd offer you the opportunity to comment on how much more difficult the battle is to get people to understand when you see provincial governments going down the paths that those three are.
Well, there's kind of two things at play there. For one, like on a larger level, there are people who have a vested interest in getting Western countries like ours to just fight amongst themselves.
Yeah, that's
true. It distracts from the issue. It keeps us from putting our focus where it should be, and we just start infighting over things like this. And you can see different topics over the last couple of years that have come up, especially where we're seeing so much misinformation and things online. And there's just people that are trying to set fires on both sides just to cause people to be going. The concern for us directly here is that it's our rights that are being politicized. Like I was flipping through the internet the other night, and there was a surgeon, I think, in the States, and all they do is they specialize in gender affirming care. And they were going through and explaining and dispelling all these myths, which I'm sure must be exhausting for them as a professional. But one of the things that they said that stood out to me was, this is the only type of healthcare that's been shown to have positive effects and positive outcomes for the individual, that has shown to increase quality of life, that has been shown to save lives. And it's one of the only, he said, the only part of healthcare that he knows of where every step of the way the profession has to defend what they're doing and why that they're doing it. And what amazes me through all of this is so many people are this concerned over something that may not affect them individually. Unless you're somebody who's seeking gender affirming care for reasons that you need. The thing that blows my mind so much in all these discussions is, why is this so much of a concern for people that this doesn't affect?
Yeah.
And that's the piece, and it's these people that are lighting fires to just cause this fighting back and forth.
And in Alberta, just to conclude on the point about that province, I believe last year, and we won't have time to get into the legislation or proposed legislation, there were only 8 people who sought top or bottom surgeries. I believe there were top surgeries at the time. I want to give you 30 seconds because I have to go to break. What's the message to the broader audience here as to what we can do here to help?
For the broader audience, my message is that you have queer people in your lives and in your community, and they don't feel safe. And last year we put a call out in the lead up to the festival for people to put up Pride and Progress flags, whether you remember the community or not, because that signals to somebody on your street, in your neighborhood, that there is safety in their community. So for the broader group, that's what I want to put out there. For our community specifically who's listening, and the board especially called me this morning and wanted me to make sure that I got this message across, the safety of people participating in our Pride events is integral to our planning. We're in the planning stages right now. We're looking at all of these things, and we're already trying to get ahead and look at what we did last year. Last year we had a great festival. It was a really fun festival. We didn't have any big instances, but that came with planning that happened in a really short amount of time. So safety is paramount to us, and we're going to continue to work and focus on that in the lead up to the festival. And we're putting a call out to the provincial and federal governments to provide resources to do that. Last year at the 11th hour, the federal government issued funding, I think, days before our parade. In July, Pride Month traditionally is in June. So we need a little bit better proactivity when it comes to governments that are recognizing that there's parts of the community that don't feel safe, and providing resources to be able to address it so that people can gather safely, which is a protected charter right.
Okay. I appreciate the call, and certainly you have my solidarity in the messages that you've delivered. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Tim.
Take care. All right, time for a break here on VOCM's Open Line. Graham and Brian, you're next when we come back. Welcome back to Open Line. We're going to go to Graham Wood on line 5. Graham, of course, from Lewisport, recently started and brought a petition to the House of Commons on extending the recreational fishery in Newfoundland and Labrador, making it more predictable, hoping that it can run from July 1st to October 1st. Graham, how are you, and how is it going with the petition?
Good morning, Tim. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome back to VOCM. We only hear your voice periodically.
Some say that's a good thing, Brian, but you got it full bore here this morning.
Good. That's good. You keep your eyes on the ball anyway. Tim, how is it going? Well, as of a few minutes ago, we're almost up to 2,900 signatures on the petition, and we're shooting for 5,000. We got 13 more days.
Okay.
What is interesting, when you use the word recreational, there's been some controversy over that, but when we drew up the petition and in consultation with MP Clifford Small, we had to use the word recreational because that's what's in the legislation.
Yeah, that's how it's defined, right, by DFO.
Yeah, it was interesting. I got a phone call the other day from somebody who actually sat in on the meeting when they discussed what the wording would be when Loyola Hearn was the Minister of Fisheries. And he said discussion was to keep it recreational because they didn't want to label it a food fishery.
Interesting.
Interesting, yeah, very interesting. And he actually was at the meeting.
Because I assume then, Graham, the argument is, again, having worked there years ago, but if food fishery would allow for catching of a greater number of species and may have other policy implications connected to the rights of others to catch fish, or am I going down the wrong path there?
Well, I think when you look at, when you look at Norway and Iceland, they talk about a cultural connection with the fishery. Okay. And interesting, I got a letter, I just sent it to you a little while ago, but the letter opens with, fish in our waters do not belong solely to the commercial fishery. And the fact is that the fish belong to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and Canada and the other countries. Now, Norway has a very let's say, cultural. The fact is that they say the fishery is a cultural thing. Same in Newfoundland. I mean, we've always been able to take a few fish, and the reality is that by limiting us to 3 days a week, people rush out and get their fish. Just like when Dick's Pickles, we couldn't get their Bick's mustard pickles.
I remember the pickles.
And our Fussell's cream. Everybody went to every little store in Newfoundland to find the Fussell's cream and the Bick's pickles, right? So allowing for flexibility, whether it's from the 1st July to Labor Day or 1st July to the 1st of October as we proposed, I mean, the reality is that people have flexibility to go out on the water, take their families, enjoy the day, not be rushed on the weekends. People come home for the holidays. When the food fishery is on in rural Newfoundland, the harbors are buzzing. Boats are coming and going. People are into the restaurants, staying at the hotels and motels. The economy actually booms in rural Newfoundland. So and
I've done this since, I have to tell you, sorry to interrupt you for a second. I see it, right? I had the opportunity to do this a couple of years ago, just out of the gut in Kitty Vitty, and it was fun. It was fantastic. It was, I can't praise it enough. Was there with a bunch of other people who were in town for some international rugby, and they still talk about it. And they say they'd come back and do it again. And I can only imagine the excitement and thrill of doing it outside of the city in rural Newfoundland. So sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, it's not a problem. But I mean, the fact is that it becomes a very important part of what the government of Newfoundland, and we don't hear anything from any elected officials at all. The only one that I've been in communication with is Clifford Small. But we hear the government of Newfoundland wants to increase tourism. The fishing in BC is worth hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And yet in Newfoundland, we can only take tours, as I operate muscle bid boat tours, we can only take tours to retain the fish on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Now, what about people who call me for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? And I have to tell them, I'm sorry, we can't retain fish. I can get a special experimental license from DFO to catch fish. I have to weigh them, measure them, document them, give the GPS location, and then send in a report at the end of the year to tell them how many fish I've actually caught. But the last statement in the actual experimental license, unlike Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI, and people who operate under experimental licenses, it says to us, must be returned live after study. And the reality is that a lot of those fish, don't survive being taken out of the water, put on a platter on the boat, weighed, measured, all that stuff, and put them back in, and their air bladders blow up, and they just float along the water, and they're great food for the eagles. Yeah. So the reality is that we in Newfoundland have been too complacent over the years, and since we talk about the food fishery. If people have more flexibility to get on the water when the days are good, when they have their families home, when their relatives are around, and they can make a day of it, like you said, it's an experiential, a major positive experience for people who visit here.
Oh, it's brilliant. As I say, people still talk about it. I got to give you about a minute here. So how can people help? Because you're right, isn't it that 5,000 person threshold is vital for getting the petition more attention. So what can people do if they want to help you with this?
Well, they can go to ourcommons.ca and search petitions. And the petition is E4781, right? But I just want to make one more point.
Sure.
The FFAWU made a statement last Friday that they don't agree with this. In fact, in the initial meeting, they never agreed. They never wanted a food fishery or recreational fishery. The people of the province own this resource, not the commercial fishermen. The fact is that they called for increased monitoring and enforcement. So now we want more cops on the water. We want more people on the wharf.
Okay.
There are people who are abusing it. I don't disagree with that. And I'm not saying there's not fishermen who are doing it. But, when you go out and buy fish from a local fisherman, I don't know if that fish has been registered under the TAC or what their catch limits are. All I know is I buy the fish for $4 to $5 a pound, as other people do, rather than going to Loblaws or Sobeys and paying $10 a pound for the fish. And it's beautiful fresh fish. Local fishermen do a fantastic job in preserving their fish and preparing the fish and selling it. And they're selling it for $4.50 a pound, not 85 cents a pound on grade A or 30 cents a pound in grade C. Head on gut. So, I just want to make that statement because the reality is that if we think that we're going to add more enforcement on the water, then the cost of that more enforcement is humongous. I don't know what it costs to train a fisheries officer. And give them
it's not cheap. It's not any law enforcement officer is because there's a number of skill sets that are required. But don't mean to cut you off. Got to go to break here, Graham. Thank you.
Anyway,
good luck. Keep us updated on that petition.
Yeah, get out and sign your name to the petition, and hopefully we can get the federal government and maybe the provincial government, if they want to speak up on behalf of their citizens, to support it and get this done.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the call today. Take care.
Take care. Thanks.
All right, that was Graham Wood talking about the petition he's launched and also giving us some interesting background on the recreational fishery definitional policy. All things that are vital to know. Time for a break here on Open Line. When we come back, Brian, you're up next to talk about mass shootings and gun laws. I'm guessing we're going to be looking at that situation in Kansas City. Back with that after this. Well, I was listening to that ad just before I go to Brian, the Newfoundland Labrador construction industry. So many of you know my dad was involved in construction for years. Wonderful community, great people, but characters. And I was reminded that it must be the season of the famous construction bonds build, or as we used to call it at home, the destruction bonds build. Let's just say in the day, people took their fun to levels you couldn't today. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, just the odd tree and parts and pieces. People out there will know what I mean, but fond memories of that time of year. My mother doesn't, but I do. All right, with that little tease, I'm going to go to Brian, who is on line one. And Brian, you want to talk about mass shootings and gun laws, and God, we're back here again. It seems like we never leave it, unfortunately, because of Kansas City this week.
Okay, good morning, Tim. How are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Very good. I've been phoning in a long, long time. I got just two things I really want to talk about. The first thing is about what happened in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And Tim, it's the same thing, you know. These people, they get guns. We're told they have to need them because they're hunters, and they're hunting people. What happened? I don't know what happened in Kansas City. They arrested some young people. I don't know what it got to do. But the story is the same, Tim. You got a report on CNN, and someone's at the scene, and they're interviewing some people who may have seen the shooters and stuff like that. And then you got the Republican politicians coming on television offering their prayers and their thoughts. Well, Tim, my reading of that is that nothing gets on my nerves most than these American conservative politicians offering their prayers and their thoughts. Now, Tim, I'm willing to admit that every one of your listeners, including yourself, are better Christians than I'll ever be. So I'm not trying to give a sermon to these people this morning, but I tell you what, for my speaking to people, they usually turn to God when they have situations in which they have no control over. Your loved one may have a cancer, they're dying, they're praying to God for a miracle. Your loved one may be in a car accident and they're on life support, and you don't know what's going to happen. They have no control over it. Well, I think if I were God, and God, you better be glad I'm not, I think God would say to those people, pray to me for things you have no control over. He'd say to these Republicans in the States and the conservatives in this country, pray to me when you face problems that you really have no control over. See, Republicans in the States got all the control they need. They can have background checks. They can make sure that teenagers don't get their hands on AR-15 rifles. They can make sure that people coming out of mental institutions can't buy guns. So stop this prayers and thoughts and do something about it.
Let me just get in there for a second, Brian. And I think it was it Obama after he was president? It was somebody who just took that very point you made and said enough with the thoughts and prayers. That you know, that's nice, but that's not doing anything. Just so people understand in Kansas City, so we get the what we know out so far. 20 people shot. Wounded more than 20 people, one person killed. Half the people shot were children. So far, according to CNN, there are two teenagers in custody. The shooting, according to police sources, as reported by CNN, stemmed from a dispute between several people, and preliminary investigation findings have shown that there is no nexus to terrorism and homegrown violent extremism. The latter part is nice to know, but as you say, the reality is that, look, certainly there's an issue with the political influence of the National Rifle Association and others in the United States. There's a cultural challenge in the United States, why they don't amend their constitution, that in this day and age the right to bear arms is still a constitutional right in the U.S. It makes no sense. This shooting in Kansas City, as I understand it, happened on the anniversary of that terrible mass shooting in Parkland, Florida, I believe, or Parkland, Texas, where 17 people were killed. I mean, it's almost... There are daily shootings in the United States of this magnitude, and there's so much that has to change, and good for you for calling it out. What else did you want to add? I don't want to diminish. Go ahead.
A couple of callers ago, you interviewed a gentleman who spoke about the LGBT problems.
Yes.
I taught in Saskatchewan for 31 years, Tim, and I was there when the Saskatchewan Party was born. After Grant Devine, and you may know Grant Devine.
That whole fallout, yes, yep.
After he lost the election, and half his cabinet ended up in prison. And in my teaching in 31 years, I had gay students, I had lesbian students, and the last thing I would want to see is any of them been abused. They were good, they were kind kids, they treated me very, very well, and I feel for them. And I did some research way back 31 years ago, and I found that the number of gay teenagers who kill themselves is way more than the number of kids who are not gay. And I would believe it's probably the same thing today. And it's because they listen now to CNN and others and hear the jury followers of this world condemn them, and they're finding their quickest way out. So thank you for interviewing that gentleman. I taught many, many students who were LGBTQ members, and I always feel for them, and I always wonder how many of them are still alive. And I'd like to thank you. I think that was a good conversation. I think people who have never met a gay person should, and they find that, they're good people. And the students always treated me very, very well. I had no problems, and they were very kind.
Well, thank you, Brian. And I think the stats are still very similar. The debate, the concern that people have about some of the trans rights policies that different governments are bringing in is you're going to cause more trauma and more stress among people who are dealing with their identity and going through that journey. So important to talk about it. All right, I can give you 30 seconds for anything else. Otherwise, I got to go to the news.
Well, it's good talking to you, Tim. Keep up the good work. You got your hands, you got your feelings in the pulse of what people are thinking. I think you're one person who can bring out the message of treat people better. Put away your guns. You don't need AR-15s. And for God's sakes, people like me should never have guns.
Yeah. Well, that's very kind of you. I think you've done an excellent job yourself, Brian. You have a good day. Thanks for calling.
Good morning.
Take care. All right, time for a break here on VOCM's Open Line. Time for news. When we come back, Dr. Pat Parfrey, we're going to talk about the Health Court NL and see where we are in terms of an update. They have a number of events happening next week. Well, they will be doing some updating. So we'll hear from Dr. Parfrey after this.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Well, if it's not affordability or accountability, it's healthcare that rightly is driving a lot of public interest these days and driving news stories as we see tales here in Ottawa, for example, waiting to see if there's going to be a pharmacare deal between the federal Liberals and the New Democrats. One of the things that's happened in Newfoundland and Labrador over the last number of years is there's been a transformation initiative. Quality of Care Newfoundland this week is hosting an update called Health Accord Newfoundland and Labrador a checkpoint. It's a public meeting, and one of the speakers will be Dr. Pat Parfrey, who, of course, is the Deputy Minister of Health Transformation. Now, I'm just going to say this as I always do. I've known Pat for a long time, so I'm going to call him Pat and not Dr. Parfrey, not because I lack respect. Pat, how are you today?
I'm good, Timmy, and I'll call you Timmy because I've called you that for a long time.
Yes, and we'll conduct ourselves accordingly. Now, I do want you to share what you're going to say on Tuesday as best you can. So you've got this update coming. It's a public event, which I think is very important, and I know certainly in both your current role and previous roles, you've always been determined to make sure that there's as much transparency as possible so people can understand and grasp and have an input as to what change is coming and what change they would like. So what can you tell us now, Pat, before the event on Tuesday about how things are going? What is the checkpoint report?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand what's actually happened in terms of the health accord, and also to understand my role, because normally deputy ministers don't go into the public arena to comment on what government are actually doing. But the event that Quality of Care NL are trying to organise, or are organising, involves three people. It involves Sister Elizabeth Davis, who was the co-chair with me, to introduce what the plan intended. And then I'm going to speak about where we are around policy development and actions undertaken on the road to changing culture as it pertains to the social determinants of health. And then David Diamond, who is the CEO of NL Health Services, is going to talk about the policies and actions that have been undertaken on the healthcare side. And then I'm going to talk again about the important things that are necessary to facilitate change, like a health information system and an ambulance system and a learning health and social system. All these things are things that are necessary to allow us to change our health outcomes. So we're hoping to present over 1 hour a very factual piece of information, a very factual presentation about where we stand with the 59 calls to action that were recommended in the Health Accord.
And public engagement, how important has it been so far? I know that when you and Sister Elizabeth ran the task force, you did a lot of meetings around the province. You spent a lot of time engaging with people. How important does it still remain as you try and transform the healthcare system?
Well, I think that the change management process that's necessary for the degree of change that was recommended is really substantial, and that the engagement with the public is equally important for them to understand that we can't get change instantly, that we have problems in our healthcare system representative of what's happening all across Canada, and to understand what actions are being put into place to try and improve health care and improve the social determinants of health. The minister and people and other people that go on these medical action updates, there are various subject matter experts go on with them, so he tries to keep the public informed about what's happening, and so does the Premier. And obviously the opposition parties as well try to ensure that action is taken on the Health Accord. So I think that there's been a fair amount of requests from various people. Say, we really like to know where we stand 18 months after the implementation plan went in, about where we stand in the action cycle. And by the action cycle, I'm talking about the policy development on these various types of actions and the implementation of these actions, and where we stand in these actions, and whether is it too early to think that we might feel some difference. Is very early, and so the amount that you might feel in the ground is actually probably relatively small. But there are things that one should be able to feel in the ground as being an indication that that things are improving.
My words, not yours here, but watching health transformation in Newfoundland and Labrador and across the country, as I get to do, not at your level, but just at a level high enough that I can see some movement. But it does seem that real transformation is going to take time. It's going to take potentially a decade or longer. Without putting you in a difficult spot, appreciating, again, you're not a politician but a government official. Does are you sensing the public gets, whether it's a decade, 2 decades, that a real change is going to take real time?
Well, I think that the basic tenor across the country is that we do have to have what's called upstream approaches to preventing bad health outcomes. And by that is meant that we do have to put efforts into the social determinants of health around poverty and food insecurity and housing and inclusion and those types of things. And the impact of the climate emergency, they're more important than our healthcare, the way our healthcare system works. But it's totally understandable that when people have to spend a long time in an emergency room or that they don't have access to a family doctor, that things that are related to the healthcare system are front of mind. And I think that there's a fairly universal feeling across Canada that we do have to be able to improve our access to our healthcare system and improve the way we deliver across the whole country.
Yeah, and you're certainly seeing the hot debate here in Ontario right now, and you have some of this in Newfoundland and Labrador, is, of course, about, which is already in the system, having more private delivery of publicly funded services. Won't haul you into that. That wouldn't be fair today to do that to you or anybody else at the moment. But so if people go on Tuesday night, they're going to get this comprehensive report. There'll be the opportunity for questions, I assume. How will this continue? Will there be regular updates? Will there be regular engagement with the public?
I think the other piece of Tuesday night is not only is there the public presentation of where we stand in these various actions, a kind of a factual accounting, nothing more than that, and the fact that that it's going virtual and that the registration for virtual is higher than the registration for on-site, so to speak, is important. I think my recommendation will be, having evaluated how this goes, etc., would be that there should be regular updates. And one of the things we've recommended is an NL Health Quality Council, which would have responsibility for reporting to the public on health-related matters and social determinants of health matters, and would have responsibility for making these things understandable to the public and what we call health literacy, I suppose. But the belief that transparency is going to be the mother of change is probably a good understanding.
Last question for you. Recently been doing a lot of work in the field of impact measurement, which is obviously something you're familiar with and looking to track here. There's a variety of different models. It's not like accounting. It's not IFRS or GAAP or the various models that exist to look straight up at how the books are balanced and how cash flow works. Have you come forward with impact measurements that you're comfortable with that can legitimately grade the progress or lack thereof of this initiative?
Well, we have done a lot of work on a framework for evaluating quality of life and the domains of quality of life that are available. There's a federal initiative around this. And the domains that they have are social, environmental, prosperity, health, and public health and safety. So governance, I suppose, might be a better one. And within that framework, there's multiple metrics that evaluate how well we are doing on components of these, and they're available for us to compare across the country. And it's feasible for us to use that data to work out how to go forward. But the key thing is what's our objective? Yeah. And our life expectancy is lower than the rest of Canada, and clearly we would like to be able to improve that by improving that life expectancy, bringing it up to the Canadian average. But there's more to it than that. There is also, what is the quality of life really, really like? Do we really feel good life satisfaction? And the interesting thing is that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have the highest ranking for that quality of life indicator. So the framework of evaluating the impact of what we're trying to do needs to be nuanced, and it is relatively complicated. But there is a framework by which we can go forward and examine our impacts.
And I did mislead. One last question, and I'll let you go. I know you're a busy guy. And it is, you've worked in the Newfoundland and Labrador healthcare system for decades. How do you personally feel? You sound as committed as ever to transformation. Do you feel like things are moving in the right direction?
Oh, I'm absolutely certain of it. I mean, I think that you could to describe what's going on the social side and the health side. You could say there are 20, 30 silos of things, from seniors care to community care to the ambulance system to the health information system to poverty reduction, and they're all in silos and they're not integrated. And the capacity to create that bridge, I suppose, is the image we're using, that bridge to better health outcomes, depends on having a strong foundation of an integrated foundation of those things that affect the social determinants of health, and then a strong pillar around a health system that's balanced across the acute side and the community side and the long-term care side, and then that bridge to allow these things to function together. And by that I'm talking, as I mentioned earlier, an integrated ambulance system, a health information system, an approach to change that depends on data, matching best practice or actual practice with best practice, proper governance. And I suppose I should really mention that another piece, of course, is our linkage with the federal government. And the health accord was used in our discussions with the federal government because we're the one province that had a plan. And we were able to provide this document that had our plan that we are going to go forward for the next 5 years, and had a big influence in facilitating health transfers to try and help us fund what we needed to do.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll look forward to Tuesday. Good to talk to you, my friend, and good luck on Tuesday.
Thanks very much, Tim. Bye.
Okay, that was Dr. Pat Parfrey, the Deputy Minister of Health Transformation. And again, we will be watching the presentation at Quality Newfoundland on Tuesday evening. Time for a break here on VOCM. Back with more of your calls after that. Welcome back to Open Line. Good conversation there with Dr. Parfrey on health transformation. Encourage you to check that out next week. As was noted, you can do that online. All right, Dave, where am I going? Still don't have the text. Oh, I know Mark Wilson's waiting, but we have someone who wants to come on with a public service. And who? Sorry? Oh, Corey. Sorry, Corey. We're having a little breakdown on our end. My bad. Corey, come on and save us, Corey.
No worries. No worries. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. What's going on, Corey?
Excellent. I just wanted to call in just quickly because I just left my home out in Paradise, and just wanted to put some extra caution out because while it's already a bit tricky driving around town today with the narrow streets, further complicating things are traffic lights. I've noticed in the space of 5 minutes, vehicles running red lights on 3 different sets of traffic lights because with all the blowing snow we've had, the lights are actually filled up with snow. So it's hard to see in some places whether the light's red or green. So just wanted to make that comment, and then for drivers to take an extra caution when you're approaching someone who's coming at you in a perpendicular direction to make sure that the light is actually red or green.
Well, that was and I'm not being sarcastic or an arse here. That was worth waiting for, Corey. Thank you. It's true. You got to be careful while you're out there. It's dangerous this time of year when those snow drifts are up and the wind's blowing. Thank you for making the call, Corey.
Indeed. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Have a good day. All right. Mark Wilson, housing advocate. How are you? You're on the program. Good to speak to you again.
Hey, Tim. How's it going today?
I am good. Boy, you must be busy trying to address an avalanche of ideas, sometimes money, sometimes screw-ups. I mean, how is it going, Mark, on the housing advocacy front?
I mean, it's not an easy job, to be honest. It's not a job, I'll be honest, as well, Tim. It's, I do all this as a volunteer.
Of course.
I don't take any money. We're fundraising to try to bring down tiny shelters which are actually built in Cambridge, Ontario, to keep people warm and safe and give them a locked door that they can be behind. So that's sort of my main goal right now, is to try to continue that fundraiser, and we're getting closer. We'll bring that down and we'll tour it around and show people what it is. And I think it's important. I mean, you've dealt with governments and municipalities and at many levels, really, Tim. You know what it's like. You've got to put these things in front of people for them to understand how it works and what it would do to change the equation on how we approach homelessness, how we approach shelters. But I guess, my main reason for calling in was to speak a little bit about the Federal Housing Advocates report that came out on encampments the other day. Encampments,
and their encampments are not just as you alluded to, not just a challenge in St. John's, they're a challenge all over the country right now. And I say challenge as in it is obviously the people who have taken refuge in there are challenged to find homes and comfort and safety. Governments are challenged to find policies that work for them. Provincial, federal. It is a multi-layered issue, I should say, that nobody seems to have a clear answer for, and that's probably not surprising. Anyway, with that preamble, sorry, Mark, I give it back to you.
Yeah, no problem. No, it's good to know also, like with you being in Ottawa, it's probably good to know how things are happening elsewhere. I tuned in yesterday to a cross-country discussion on encampments. And there was definitely some different opinions that came out, but ultimately, like the Federal Housing Advocate has stated in her report, we need to be able to provide the necessities of life and services to folks, to provide both for their physical and their mental health. So that includes water, food, sanitation, heating and cooling, accessibility, healthcare and harm reduction. And therein lies the challenge, Tim. How do you do that when people are in tents right now? Yeah. So, I guess what I wanted to sort of bring to the attention of folks is that there are people still at Tent City at the Colonial Building. A lot of people think that through the myriad of announcements that has gone and the creation of a task force, Premier's task force, that people are not there anymore. But I need the public to know that people are there. What I learned yesterday and what I've learned in my research from various encampments in Ontario, specifically like Kitchener and Waterloo area, where there are two very different encampments that are, I guess I would say, like the 2.0 and 3.0 version of Tent City, where people are living in structures that are insulated and heated, and they've got electricity, they've got access to central buildings that provide supports for them, whether it's supports to get into what we would call a real home, or whether it's supports for mental health or for addiction services or just general health care. They're providing these services on the site, like in place, and they're doing it very efficiently, and they're doing it very inexpensively. So I want people to know that there are still people there at Tent City. I want people to know also that the reason that, at least this is my opinion, Tim, you feel free to jump in. I think the reason that these encampments are popping up is partially the cost of living, partially just the fact that rents have gone up everywhere, and they're squeezing people out. Not just folks with addictions and mental health issues. Yeah, they're squeezing people out that are have lost their job or just fallen on hard times.
Yeah, and Mark, that seems to be like the reportage from different parts of the country. Although I can't disagree with you. I think those are key factors in all of this, and those are issues that people are trying to address. But when you're in a difficult circumstance, sometimes you don't have a choice, and you do what you do, and it causes tensions and the like. Anyway, before I can give you 30 seconds to sum up because I got to go to news. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, the most important thing to know is that we were told there was, we saw about a dozen people standing in front of the Premier announcing a task force on homelessness, and almost nothing has been done. It's, 78 days ago? November 30th is when they announced that. We've had over 50 days, I think about 53 days since Christmas. John Abbott had said, we're going to get them out of there before Christmas, and it has not been done. So along with the Federal Advocates report, we need to see governments, all levels of government, work together. And I'm happy that, I think that they can work with community on that. But we need to send a message to them. And I urge folks to contact their representatives and tell them enough is enough. We've got to solve this issue.
All right. Well said, Mark. We'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks,
Keep
Tim.
up your strong work. These are problems we have to get at. Good to talk to you today.
Good to talk to you. Have a great day.
All right, that was housing advocate Mark Wilson. Time for quick news here on VOCM. When we come back, Michael Bartlett, the CEO of Basketball Canada, they're shooting the lights out these days, hitting more three-pointers than Steph Curry. Both men's and women's teams going to the Olympics. We'll talk about that and some challenges in the sports sector around funding. Seems to be a theme of this program today. A lot of people needing to look at how they're resourced. Back with Mike Bartlett right after the news here on VOCM.
Saturday morning, join us for the Irish Newfoundland Show. Send your request to irishnl@vocm.com or submit them online at vocm.com.
You gotta love Brian. I've never heard that. Urban explorers, vandals, and vermin. Well, I don't think our next guest fits into any of those categories, although he is on his way to Indiana for the NBA All-Star Game, and lucky him. Happy to welcome the CEO of Canada Basketball, Michael Bartlett. How are you doing, Michael?
Very well this morning, Tim. Thanks for having me.
So you can confirm you're not an urban explorer, a vandal, or vermin, just so that's clear with the audience, none of the above?
No, just pulled over on I-75. That's all for me at this point.
Well, all from you. Let's talk a little bit about Paris 24, because for the first time in a long time, going to the Olympics in Paris starting in late July are both Canada's men's and women's basketball team. You're still relatively new as the CEO. This has got to be great for basketball, and you must be exceedingly pleased as well.
Yeah, we certainly are. It's a long time coming. It's an expectation that we have of ourselves and of our program, and quite frankly, I think the same expectation that Canada has for us as well. First time since 2000, only the fourth time in history that both the men's and women's program have punched their ticket for the same Olympics. So not only are we excited about the qualification, looking at the talent that we have, looking at the way that we stack up against international competition, this should be a summer that Canadians get a chance to cheer for us in meaningful games. Our expectation is that we compete for medals and, make this the Summer Olympics of basketball.
How excited do the players get about the Olympics, Michael? I mean, you see I think we've all seen, any of us who are sports fans, the multiple documentaries on the American Dream Team and what it seems to mean to American athletes. I assume for our players, the dream is as big and as prestigious, and many of our star NBA players are giving their time to do this because they want to win those medals, and our WNBA players too. So how is it for the players?
Yeah, the pride runs deep, and what we've been focused on recently as well is making sure that we match and give them a reason to be as proud of the program as they are of their country. We have examples, I think, almost every night where an NBA Canadian athlete is talking about being proud of representing his country. We've got athletes that weren't in the mix a few years ago when we put our core roster strategy together that are now like beating down the door saying, I really hope I get a shot to play in Paris. And then you've got Canada and perhaps even the world's best player, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right now talking about his pride and being really the lead dog in the fight for us when it came to getting commitments for athletes. He's the first one to put up his hand. And when your best player is the most committed, it transcends. And then, we qualified not really the way we drew it up this past weekend in Hungary for the women's program, and Natalia Chanwa, our team captain and now 4-time Olympian, stood up. She's got a 10-month-old son. And said, when I had Maverick, I was asked, are you going to work to come back, and come back to the WNBA? She's like, no, I'm going to work to come back to play for Canada in the Olympics. That's my focus. I want my son to see that his mom is an Olympian. And when you hear stories like that, it just makes you realize that we've built a program that the athletes are proud of, and we owe them that same resourcing. We owe them that same opportunity to make their country proud while they're doing it.
Yeah, resourcing is where I want to go now, and we're going to hear more about that. You're, of course, the CEO of Canada Basketball, one of the well-known national sports organizations in Canada. There's been concern among the national sports organizations, also with the Canadian Olympic Committee and other sports bodies in the country, that there's been a funding gap that hasn't been addressed. And there's a hope that the federal government, navigating all the other challenges that they're dealing with, and we've talked a lot about them today, whether it be housing affordability, whether it be health care, whether it be security issues. There's a hope, though, in the national sports organizations, in the Canadian sporting community, that we're going potentially to see the federal government do a little bit of reinvestment, because it hasn't done it in a long time. Why is that important, Michael? And what are you hoping you'll see from the federal government as we approach the federal budget?
Yeah, well, I certainly, as sport leaders in this country, understand that then there are many issues that the government is being asked to concentrate on and fund solutions for. What we're asking for, listen, the funding for national sport organizations has been flat since 2005. Flat. Not a little bit of inflation increase every year. Flat since 2005. That actually represents this year about $109 million shortfall for the entire sector in an Olympic year, when the federal government is also going to rely on us and lean in, as politicians often do, to be part of the shine that we create for Canada. And if we don't go and win the medals that Canada expects us to do, because we don't have the resources to pour into that preparation, there'll be inquiries, there'll be, conversations, how when the podium was created a number of years ago, we weren't winning enough medals. And yet all of this pressure is being downstreamed on NSOs to do the right thing by the way of competing at the highest level, also do the right thing by way of adopting new and, in some cases, advanced policies, which are very important foundation. When we've been allowed as an organization at Canada Basketball to be able to monetize ourselves. Because, as you pointed out, we're one of the larger and more notable NSOs. But, even that, we are struggling each year to break even because the sector as a whole, there's only so much money around in brand partnerships and sport partnerships and government partnerships to fund what Canada expects us to do. And, I feel the sector in and of itself is at an absolute breaking point. Deloitte is working with the CC on a study that is being presented to the federal government that'll show 90% of the NSOs will be completely underwater financially and operational within 2 years. That's a story that this government can't fix it all themselves, but we do have to be at the table with government to think about, if it's not more money, is it reallocated money? Is it more efficiency in the sports system? What are we doing to make sure that when Canada needs us to give them a reason to cheer, that we are in the best position to do so?
And aspiration's so important. I was just talking before you came on with the Newfoundland Deputy Minister of Health Transformation, who, by the way, also used to be the coach of Canada's national rugby team. He was talking about the social determinants of health, and certainly hope and opportunity are part of that. Just so people also understand it, Michael, national sports organizations aren't just about national teams and winning medals, so that often is their priority. What is the contribution that you make to the community, to the grassroots? And I say this as a dad sitting here in Ottawa this morning who has a son who goes to the Carleton Ravens basketball camp and loves every minute of it. And there's 60, 70 other kids there who are happy, healthy, engaging. Just if you can, talk about the grassroots and the community for a moment and why that money matters.
Yeah, we certainly probably spend more time talking about what we do as organizations to compete for Canada internationally, just as important are the system alignments that we oversee, the policies, procedures, coaching. Your son, my daughter, when they enter a gym to play basketball, are entering, say, head coach. That takes infrastructure through it. Sorry, you're there?
Yeah, I was there. If you stand right where we are, we lost you there for a second. I lost you at Safe Sport. That's all right. Keep going.
Yeah. So, the downstream of infrastructure from the national sport organizations into community sport takes time, energy, and money as well. And what we are doing as a sport, what all my counterparts and the other sport organizations across this country is, we're not just focusing on here, the pyramid, the high elite athlete. We are working on the grassroots health and infrastructure of our sports as well. And we also know the best way to generate interest in the sport is, when the Olympic lights are on or when World Cup lights are on, to shine. And I know, they call it the Vince Carter effect back in the day. There's probably a Raptors championship effect. When we go to the Olympics and when other sports go to the Olympics and do their job, a son or daughter in a household somewhere in Canada is going out to their driveway or to their local pool or to their track to replicate what they just saw. And they're asking mom and dad to put me in sport. There is ream and pages of data that shows the health benefits of being an individual and team sport and the preventative medicine impact that has in a country as well. So we know that good sport activity is good for the country. We believe that we are inspiring and instigating good sport activity at the community level, but then we're also protecting the community level with the infrastructure, policies and procedures and coaching certification that we downstream through communities across the country.
Yeah, well said, and obviously in full agreement. I will let you go, Michael, let you get back on your way to Indianapolis. We'll be watching Paris this summer. We'll be watching Shea Gilgeous-Alexander this weekend, see if we can steal that All-Star MVP. Thanks for the time, and good luck with the funding initiative. It's certainly vital.
Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. That was Michael Barrett, the CEO of Canada Basketball. Back with more of your calls after this. Welcome back. We'll go to you, Tony. How are you? Tony, I don't know what line you're on, but I know you're out there. How are you?
Yes, how are you? I'm good, and you?
Not bad, thank you. Now, let me guess. You think Justin Trudeau is the greatest prime minister ever. You do not want him to resign, and you've become a Liberal. Do I have that right or no?
I know. Yes, that's right. I think I'm going to go to work for Trudeau. Yeah, it's just an awful. I mean, every week there's a scandal, but here and now with the Auditor General coming out and right now with she had no proof. At least $60 million, and they won't release the documents or have destroyed them. That she now the RCMP got to go to court in order to get a court order in order to get the rest of the files in order to find out how much money was spent. So
yeah, you're talking. I mean, let's give people. Yeah, no. Let's just give people the context, and that's an important story. So it's the Arrive Canada app, which the Conservatives are now calling the Arrive scam. And as you rightly point out, the Federal Auditor General World recently released a report. It's a little under 60 million. It's like 59.4 or something. She was questioned. $59.4 million spending was very questionable. She questioned the approval. The bookkeeping. I think if I recall her statements correctly, she also said she'd never seen anything like this in her 4 years of being in the role. The other thing I would add is since there's been more reporting to say that the company involved in this, which just has 4 people in it, has had something like $259 million in contracts from the federal government. So the RCMP are also now investigating aspects of this. Sorry, Tony, wanted to give the context. You keep going.
No, that's good. But anyway, yes, and now, they won't release the files, and Trudeau will not release them, even though he can get them. They won't release them. And that $259 million that they gave out to GC Stratus for work, and some was for IT work, millions of dollars that was gave to them, and they don't even do IT work. So, this is
that's another important point. They contracted out a lot of the work, and they would take a fee for facilitating the contract. Keep going.
Yeah. And that's what gets me. And then Trudeau, he can have any, and he turned around and saying, "Well, it was an investigation." No, he knows what it is. Since 2 weeks after he got elected, this company started collecting millions of dollars, and it's up now to almost $260 million, and no work done, no IT work done, even though they're supposed to be doing IT work. So, this is a company now who's got their office in a basement of a cottage with 4 employees, and collect almost $260 million. When you got people out there starving to death, 2 million people lined up at food banks, and yet they're giving away money like this and no accountability for it. It's just so much.
There's a lot there, and there's 2 federal government employees that have been suspended. Though important to point out, because I know you'd want to be fair, to date, the Auditor General has found no political connections or links. We'll see what transpires. I think this story is going to keep going. Got to give you about 1 more minute. I got to ask you about this. What did you think of the Environment Minister? All the trouble, federal one. He got all the trouble he did talking about no more roads.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. No more roads. This is unbelievable. We're not going to have cars running now. We're going to get bikes and go around.
You still need pavement for bikes too, by the way. But to be fair to him, he did clarify, and he eventually said he was speaking about one funding project in Quebec. But after he did that, the damage was done. I'll give you 30 seconds. Tony, is Poilievre going to win or not?
Oh, he's already got it won. It's only a matter of calling the election now. But at the same time, now you got the contracts that down here, the same thing with the Liberal Party here. They're handing out contracts left, right, and centre, paying 3 and 4 times more than other contracts. You take up here now, the central Newfoundland,
I don't. You know what? Let's not go down this path because I don't know about it, so I don't want to get wrong information out there.
Anyway, federal government. Trudeau.
But you're going to keep going. All right, Tony. Yeah. Good to talk to you.
Later.
Bye. I love Tony's persistence. Thank you, everybody. Today, wonderful show. Lots of good conversations. Lots of important things going on out there. Stay safe in that snow because you really do have it. We don't have it to the same degree here in Ontario. Have a wonderful weekend. Patty will be back, I believe, on Monday or Tuesday. Thank you. I look forward to the next time we chat. And for now, I'm Tim Powers. This is VOCM's Open Line. Have a great weekend.